Welcome back to Car Mechanics Simulator 2021. Today we're moving on to our second story car. It's a 2015 Griffin Tyro. Now today I thought we would actually try and see if we could discover the parts that need fixing via the test track. Because we've not done it yet, so it's a good chance to use it for the first time. I will say this car does remind me of a Mini, and I know a lot of the cars can't use the real names due to the licensing issues, but that's kind of what this would remind me of. So to actually take it anywhere, to drive the car, we need to get inside and start the car up. Oh. So I've now put the liquids in to try and start the car. Hopefully there's enough oil in it now. I wasn't expecting that. We had to spend £40 on the liquids, and the downside to that is we're probably going to have to take them all out again. But just to take it to the test track, we had to do it. We didn't really have much choice. So off to the test track we go. Now this is our first time on the test track. This does give us a trophy, which is road tested, which is finished test track. So we start off with the slalom test, and okay, my driving wasn't fantastic as we crashed the car. Luckily, crashing the car on the test track doesn't do any extra damage, otherwise we'd be in a bit of trouble right now. So slalom test complete, not brilliantly. Next is the acceleration test. Not too bad, I think it accelerates pretty well. And then we have the suspension test next. Over the bumps, hopefully this will be able to show us what parts need replacing. And then we have the brake test last. Not too bad. And here is a list of parts that need replacing. Brake pads, brake disc ventilated, rubber bushings. Now the rubber bushings are interesting. My other half's car just had an MOT and they've got an advisory on the rubber bushings. It's got some really good parts that are really good condition, but we need to find these rubber bushings. And here we are. So we can now have a quick look to see what we've managed to find. And we've managed to find near enough, we've found everything in fact. Spark plugs need replacing, brake pads, fluids obviously we're going to have to drain and replace even though we topped them up just to enable us to take the car for the test track. Bit of a waste of money, but we didn't really have much choice. But what the test track has done has helped us massively find what's needed. And that's the important part. Now you can get quite a lot of clues of what's needed from the story, the little bit that tells you the customer, a bit of history of the car itself. This one doesn't really say too much. They're referred to us by another car dealer, but it does give us a little bit of an indication. I think the test track was definitely the right way to go. So where to start first? Obviously liquids we're going to need to check. We're going to need to change and refill liquids. I think probably rubber bushings are going to be the first thing. And I will tell you right now, this took me a long time to find these rubber bushings. Mainly because the car has quite a few. But I didn't need the majority of them. The majority of them were okay. But here we are, we finally found one of the rubber bushes. I had to actually highlight it in the car part list just to be able to find the location. And luckily for us, after that, it was quite simple to find them. It was just not finding that first one was just difficult. This is where my lack of knowledge on cars comes into play. Now I know where they are. I'll know to check for these most of the time now. But the rubber bushings, there are quite a few in different places. The problem was these 4 that are part of the main suspension. And they seem to be the main ones that go all the time. So that's what we'll focus on first of all. 4 rubber bushes. And we have already got 2 that we've got brand new, so we can put those in. I'm not sure if the other ones are going to be good enough for what we need. Just get the 2 we need. what happened is I'd actually found other rubber bushings that were actually in good condition, and I bought the 2 new ones in advance, and then found out we didn't actually need the new ones on them ones. They weren't low enough condition to replace. So not the best start today in terms of fixing this car. Spending money on liquids that we're going to need to take out and replace anyway. Not the start I wanted. And actually filming this episode, this car took me an hour to find everything and fix everything. Obviously, I've condensed it down as much as possible. I didn't think you guys would want to see an hour of me searching for one part. And luckily, we did manage to find what we was after. It did take some time. So final rubber bush that needs replaced. And that is all done. So now we can actually move on to fixing everything else. That was the hard part. The rest of it's fairly simple to find. Fingers crossed. So we know all 4 brake pads need replacing, so we'll start there. Off with the brake calipers. And there we go, you can see by the state of them they need replacing. Just going to take off the brake pad just to see if it needs replacing. Some parts we haven't really examined enough, so we don't actually know their condition. We don't need to replace the brake pad though, the brake disc, sorry, but we do need to replace the brake pad. The one thing I do like about this is some of the parts you can tell when they're worn. You know, the rust starts showing, the brown little bits on them. Some will show the brown patterns and not be low enough to replace. It may not be on the list. And I've been umming and ahhing whether we should go above and beyond with a lot of these replacements. Should we find every broken part? Even if it's not red or orange, and if they're yellow, should we be replacing them or should we just leave them? And I kind of think, while money is an issue, we should do the job that we're being paid to do. This game has actually given me a massive newfound appreciation for car mechanics though. The amount of things they have to do to find these parts. And obviously the game does make it simplified to the point that the bodywork disappears when we're trying to replace parts. You don't have that on a real car. So you can have a lot more trying to find your way in. Now we know we needed to replace 4 brake pads, so we bought 4. Just makes life simple. And I think I actually put a brand new brake caliper on there, which I probably didn't need to do. I don't know if that was the part we took off or I bought a new one, I can't remember. But I'm probably wasting a little bit of money doing extras when we don't have to. But on to the left rear now. Again, we know the brake pads definitely need replacing. We'll have a quick look at everything else just in case. It's always worth with brakes to take off the wheels, take off everything down to the brake disc. Just check the parts out. If you do an examination of the car, the brakes don't show up. Obviously they do show up if you do a test track, because of the braking test. But it's sometimes always worth just taking a little piece extra off, just to check the condition. Just getting rid of all the stuff on the shopping list so we don't leave ourselves unsure of what we need. Now, this is where I'm not sure if I'm doing too much. As you can see, I want to buy a brake disc. And now, I don't think I needed to do this. This is me going a bit more above and beyond than we needed to. I think I could have probably left the brake disc that was on there. It wasn't red, it wasn't orange, it was yellow. But I decided to go do a little bit more. It's a story car. We still aren't 100% sure how the bonuses work. In terms of, if you do more work than required, do you get more money? Or is it a waste of money? I'm kind of testing out a little bit to see how it works, and haven't really got an answer. So that is both the rear wheels done. We've replaced brake pads and brake discs. So that is half the car done in theory. And as you can see through the wheel, you can actually do a visual inspection on a lot of the wheels. You can see through the wheel the brake pad needs replacing. That's an obvious issue. Brake caliper off first, followed by the brake pad, which we know needs replacing as well. And there's the brake disc. So the two other brake discs we replaced, we didn't need to. This was the one that was on the list of jobs. And you could say the list of jobs makes it a little bit easier, but on a lot of cars we're finding the list of jobs doesn't actually highlight anything. You do have to find the issues for yourself, which I like the idea of. I like having to discover the issue. And sometimes you can examine, sometimes you can test things. Test track is helpful for that, only as long as the car starts, so that is. I don't really want to be putting liquid in the car just to take to the test track, because that is a waste of money. But we need a new brake disc ventilated, so we'll buy that one. It's not too expensive. Brake pads we actually don't need, and we're going to replace the brake caliper. Again, it's probably above and beyond what we needed to do. The only two things really needed replacing was the brake disc ventilated and the brake pads. So the brake caliper is probably a little bit much, but while we're here, let's just do it and see if we gain a little bit more money maybe. So either we're going to gain more money, or we're going to make a mistake and not necessarily lose money, but we wouldn't make as much profit as we would have hoped. So last wheel to do now on the braking system that needs sorting out. As you can see, the brake pad, the brake disc on this one looks dodgy as well. It does look like it needs replacing. It's orange, which means it's close. We know the brake pad will definitely need replacing. It's the brake disc. I think we'll probably end up replacing it, to be fair. It did look like it needed doing. Need to clear my shopping list. I'm trying to get in the habit of clearing the shopping list every time we buy new parts, just so we don't get confused between cars and things. There's so many upgrades we can buy, and we need to start looking towards aiming for those. You know, we can buy a second lifter, which means you can have two cars on the go at once. But the downside to that is confusion of parts. That's the downside. I suppose you could use one lifter if you have your own car being fixed periodically, and whilst doing customer cars and things like that. It would make sense. And it is an upgrade we're looking for. The main focus at the minute is the extension to the garage, so we can start fixing parts. That's the priority, and that's 10,000 credits. So that's all the braking system done. Now we're moving on to the gears, the cam gears on the side of the engine. Now there was an issue with some of these, so we need to actually get into where the actual part we need. And to do that, we need to take off all these little parts, the idle rollers, cam gears, because we need to get into the timing gears. Is what we need to get into. And as you can see straight away, some of these need replacing. So the belt tensioner needs replacing. Looking at that, that's the first thing we can take off. Trying to get an angle on the engine, the side of the engine, to take these parts away is difficult. The idle roller there needs replacing as well. I think that's what we got at the top. Cam gear, that needs replacing. Later on, we can actually buy an engine lifter and actually take the engine out. And if we manage to take the engine out, it's a lot easier to work on the sides. It just makes life a lot simpler. We'll have a better visual. The difficulty of working in the engine bay itself is you lack the visual ability to actually see what you're doing that easily. So it is an issue. It is something we need to look at upgrading. But money is the issue at this point. I'm just double checking we've taken everything off we need to take off here. I just don't want to miss something. That's the problem at this point. Just trying to get a better angle. Because we can see a slight brown. The camshaft, needs replacing. But to get to that, we need to actually take off the top head of the engine itself. So we have to take out all 4 ignition coils and the timing cover on the other side. If we're going to try and get to this crankshaft. That's the thing with engines, and these are only small engines. we have got bigger engines to come. Again, we still can't take it out. There's still more we need to remove. We need to take off the timing chain. Just trying to work out, again, as I don't have much experience with cars, especially fixing cars, it's a learning curve. Once we get used to where certain parts are on certain cars, it'll be a lot easier. But again, this is one of the smaller engines. The bigger engines are going to be a lot more complicated, and there's going to be more parts to them. This is me struggling to figure out what I need to do, because it's normally things would show up in red that's stopping you taking a part off. That isn't actually showing up. But I thought, okay, so underneath the head, we're going to have to take the ignition coils out, and then we can get to the head of the engine itself, and hopefully that'll be enough to do what we need to do. There we go. If it shows green, it means you can take it off. There's nothing in the way. Yellow shows that it can't be taken off. There's something in the way of it. And red is the part that needs taken off for a part to come off. So there we go. We've now managed to get to it. We're just going to take off all these little bits that hold it in place. We definitely need to upgrade our unscrewing and screwing ability just to speed these kind of parts up. So this does take a while. It is a very slow going. And there we go. Camshafts can now come out. And I'm not sure how one side of the camshaft goes before the other. I'd expect them both to go at the same time, but someone with more knowledge of cars will know more than I do. So what do we need to replace? We need to replace the camshaft. Looks like we need an ignition coil as well. We took off 4, and only 1 is bad. So we could do with replacing that. And then we've got all the idle rollers and cam gears, belt tensioner, and a serpentine belt as well. They all need replacing. I'm actually going to replace even the yellow parts. I think we're going to end up replacing as well, just to be sure we've done everything. They're not really underneath the percentage needed for the car, but I thought it was worth replacing them all. And here is our list of parts to buy. It's quite a big list, but again, we're probably going above and beyond. But for a story car, I definitely think it's worth going a little bit more than we should, and it makes sense to replace all the parts. We also need to replace one of the little caps that we took off. I was surprised by that. But the cover, again, the cover, I'm not even sure if we need to replace it, but it is a little bit lower than it should be. As I say, we're probably going a bit above and beyond at this point. The ignition coil wasn't in the main part shop. We had to actually go to electronics. I didn't realise at the time. We haven't really used many of the other shops at this point. We've only really used the parts. So using the electronics store was different, and I completely forgot about it. But all the rollers and things are all in the main shop. This car is going to cost us quite a bit of money to fix, I believe. Serpentine belt as well. It's so easy to press the wrong button. I'm impressed with the control you have on console. I've seen people play this on PC and they have a lot of control because obviously the mouse is a lot easier to move. But I'm impressed by the amount of control you actually do have on the PS4. But at the minute, I'm in love with this game. I don't know what it is about it. It's something, it calms me down, it chills me out, and you can spend hours just tinkering away and learning at the same time. That's the surprising thing. There's so much I don't know about cars and how they work, and already I'm learning. Like I say, the bushes in my other half's car need replacing. They're only on advisory. In theory, I could go and do them myself now. I know where they're located. Chances are I won't, because I physically can't at the minute, but also I'd probably mess it up. But it's the fact I know what they are, and that's the interesting thing. So if you have an interest in cars, this is definitely the game for you, because you can learn so much. And these, like I say, these are only small cars we're doing at the minute. I'm waiting for the bigger engines. The V8s are going to be incredible, and I'm looking forward to building our own cars as well. And that's all the parts brought. So what we'll do, we'll start putting everything back together, and hopefully that'll be basically job done. So all the clips need to go back on. This is where screwing speeder being upgraded would help us massively. There's a few of these. We haven't really taken an engine apart. Okay, we took the head off. But I know a lot of engines later on are going to involve taking the whole thing apart. There's going to be lots of parts to replace and fix. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a bit tedious at times. It's going to be a lot of taking things on and off and on and off. But it's having an order to how you work, I think, does help massively. I try and do one thing, one part, buy the piece I need to replace in that one area. So the wheels, we do one wheel at a time. I think that's the easiest way of being organised and making sure you don't forget something. It's so easy to leave a piece off the car and you think you're finished, and actually you've got to take a load of other stuff off to put everything back on. And that's extremely frustrating. So now we can put the gears back on, cam gear, and the idle roller just down the bottom, and then belt and there. And we've got the tensioner, and then we should be able to put the cover back on, our brand new cover. We probably didn't need, but we've replaced anyway. And then we just got a few bits at the bottom to do, and then we can go around to the other side to the timing chain and things like that. Another serpentine belt, and then one more idle roller. And it is at this point that I realised I'd made a mistake. So after putting everything back on the engine, I realised we hadn't changed the spark plugs. And the spark plugs were listed. So all that work of putting everything back on in the timing case, we had to take it all back off again, to take off the top head again, so we can get to these spark plugs that are in the centre of the engine block, or engine head. I didn't even realise these needed replacing. I completely forgot about them. And yeah, it was very frustrating to take everything off to put, after just putting it back on. All our new parts. And as you can see, we've gone massively above and beyond on ignition coils and things. I think there was only one that actually needed replacing, but instead we've replaced them all. But yeah, I completely didn't realise about the spark plugs. That was a mistake on my part. And these are the things that take extra time. Is when you've done one lot of work, and then you realise, there's a part underneath all that I still need to replace. So I'm trying to do it in an organised manner, but sometimes you just forget about these things. As I say, spark plugs, I didn't even realise they were in the top here. I don't know why, I thought that was on the side. I think we've done an engine previously where they're on the side. We can get to them that way. But this engine has them in the middle, underneath, which unfortunately meant we had to take everything back off again after just putting it back on. You will only learn these lessons the hard way, I'm sure. And this is the reason this car took an hour. All these little errors I'm making, things that take time when they shouldn't have to. I should have done it all in one go. I think a lot of part of me is saying as well, we should be examining cars better. We have got a lot more tools to examine cars than we've been using. And I think that's something we need to start utilising more. We do need to replace the filter. That was on the list of parts needed replacing, if I'm not mistaken. So that did need replacing. That wasn't us just doing something we didn't need to do. But yeah, I do believe we will only make these mistakes a couple of times. Once we start investigating problems better, got more tools to investigate what's needed, we can be more organised in what we fix. But it does take time. That's that oil filter there that needs replacing, so that's that. And we can only do it from underneath. There's a lot of times I'm finding that you start working in the engine bay, but then you need to get the parts underneath, and the car goes up, you take that part off, but then the bit you need is on the top again. It's a lot of up and down, up and down. But we are getting there. The story car has taken us a bit of time, but I think we are honestly getting there now. So now we can replace the liquids. We did drain all these liquids before we started, after putting them in to take the car for the test track. but now we can fill them back up. It's power steering. I didn't mean to take it off. I actually meant to fill it up. So easy to do if you just click on it slightly wrong. Luckily it was empty, otherwise that probably would have been a spillage penalty. So it's a good job that was empty. That would have been bad. Let's take the cap off. Power steering, fluid. As I say, it is a brand newfound appreciation for people that work on cars. The time it takes, the knowledge needed is incredible. But we're slowly getting there. I feel like I'm learning a lot, and I hope you guys are too who are watching. I hope you're enjoying this new series on the channel. Thank you to Nighthawk for buying the game for us. I know I said it in the first video, but he actually bought the game for the channel for us to showcase it, as he is enjoying it himself. And you can spend hours and hours just tinkering away. And we haven't even got to the actual building our own cars yet. Barn finds, things like that. So that's all the liquids done now. We'll just check that we've done everything. So that's the first page and the second page. All ticked. We've changed all the fluids. I believe we're done. I believe we're done. And at this point I kind of thought, right, we've got all these parts. We've got brand new parts that I've bought that I didn't need. It's a bit of a waste of money, I know. I think we should keep some, because later on when we get the garage extension we can actually start fixing parts, which will save us money on buying brand new parts. And some of these parts may be good enough to use for cars that say use something under anything over 60% or 50% wear you can use. So some of these parts we can, the yellow parts especially, we could use in other cars, and that will save us the cost of buying brand new. So at this point I was thinking, let's get rid of everything that is orange or red. We'll keep all yellows, and obviously green are brand new, so we'll keep green. They're parts I should have brought. So yeah, all yellow and green we'll keep. Anything orange and red we'll get rid of. And at least that's a little bit of money back on the job. And once we can start fixing these things, I'm not sure if we can fix belts. We won't know really what we can and can't fix until we've got the ability to fix these things. But it does give us the ability to try, save money. What we actually need is storage, because having all these parts in my inventory all the time can be a bit of a pain. But I think that's everything sold. Everything else we'll keep for the time being. I've got a feeling we probably can't fix belts. I'll be surprised if you can. Thinking realistically, could you really fix it? I'm not sure. If not, we can set it at a later time. It's not a massive issue. But that is the car pretty much done. In fact, it is done. That is the car finished. An hour's job, condensed obviously for the video. We have finished it. Oh no, we haven't. We are missing one part we hadn't put back in. Just when you think it's all done, and this is why we had the green parts in our inventory, we'd actually forgot to put one part back on. And because of that, we had to go back in and take off the side. It wasn't too big a job, luckily. It wasn't something further in the engine. But just when you think you're finished and you find that one thing missing, luckily it warns you. But it is frustrating when just when you think you're finished, you kind of think, ah, hang on, why have I not finished? What have I missed? So easily done. But now I'm pretty sure we finished this time. There we go, car gone. So including the liquids at the start for the test track, we actually spent £1,950 on the car. Money received means we got the profit of £231. Now that profit probably should be a lot higher, but unfortunately we probably went above and beyond a little bit too much. And as with all story cars, you get a crate, 2 cards to pick, so we got some bonus XP, and we got a bonus map for barn location. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying the series, don't forget to drop a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.